I'm going to share screen because we're going to use we're going to have I prepared a PowerPoint. Okay, can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Please don't, first of all, please don't hesitate to ask questions, to interrupt me. This is not, I love the interaction. I mean, one of the things I was telling Pam that one of the things I miss most about trips to the States is these little jaunts I used to have to Greenwich. First of all, because Pam and I are old friends. Second of all, because my experience with the people in Greenwich has always been lovely. And thirdly, because as I was telling Claudia, it's the only opportunity I ever have to have real deli, because we don't have that in Israel. So, but that's certainly the last thing in line. But I mean, you have to understand there are certain things. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Zionist. I've been living here for 28 years, almost 29 years. But certain things you can't get at home. And now that Rubens is closed in Boston, the possibilities, even in North America, are limited. All right, I want to take you on a brief tour of my areas of area of specialty, but one of really one of my loves, and that's Italian jewelry. In fact, on the last mission, I think that the Greenwich Federation took to Israel, we were able to visit. I was able to host you at the Italian Museum, and I hope the next time that such a mission is going to be possible, that we'll be able to do it again. Italian jewelry is charming for many, many reasons. It's charming because it has all kinds of interesting odds and ends, and it's off the beaten track. It's not Ashkenazi, it's not German, it's not Yemenite, it's not Sephardic. It has its own flavor, its own dynamic. And a lot of people really aren't aware of just how crucial and really central a role the Jews of the Italian Peninsula played in the creation of Judaism the way that we know it. And in a certain sense, as I hope we'll see in the course of the time we're here, that we have to see that in many ways, the experience of Italian Jews over the centuries is very similar, or presents very similar, challenges and opportunities that are similar to those of us living in the Western United States or in Europe. So, part of the so if I ask what's Jewish in Italy, so most of you will recognize this picture. This is the bas-relief from the Arch of Titus, showing the Roman victory parade. When Titus conquered Jerusalem and brought the temple vessels to Jerusalem. It's a symbol of the destruction, of the start of the exile. And the fact of the matter is that aside from some Greek cities, as we'll see soon, the Jews of Italy are in fact the oldest Jewish community oldest Jewish community in Europe. But it starts on a down, and we'll come back to that. Some of you have visited Rome, and you've seen the ghetto. This picture is towards the entrance of the ghetto. That little outline that you see on the floor is where the fountain used to be the major source of water. If you've been to Rome, then more important than the Arch of Titus, which is in the Forum, and more important than the ghetto, I hope you've had this. These are what's called carciofi alla Judea, Italian artichokes, which are without a doubt one of the great delicacies of in the world. Italian Jews are like Jews everywhere, which means that, as Sir Isaiah Berlin once said, Jews are like everybody else, only more so. So Italian Jews are like Italians, only more so. So mangiare. They're like Jews, only more so. I mean, we also what was it somebody said that all Jewish holidays are, they hated us, they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. So the carciofi alla Judea, which I've never had anybody be able to make them just quite as right as they do in Rome, maybe in fact the best known part of Roman Jewish history, but it's really I'm just trying to be a little bit lighthearted. Jewish history in the Jews in Rome starts with a what shall we say, an event which we're going to be marking in a couple of weeks, couple of months. It's enough with the holidays. Um, in the year 164, Judah the Maccabee led a revolt against the Seleucid Greeks who tried to destroy Judaism, and basically Judah the Maccabee led a guerrilla war against the Seleucid Greeks who ruled. I'm going to use my little hammer thing. You see the arrow? Who ruled an empire which went from all of here all the way to India, actually. But at the time of that revolt, there was a new growing power that was threatening the world order, and that was Rome. What you see in red is, in fact, the extent of the Roman Empire at the time of the Maccabean revolt. Judah was not only a high priest, he was not only a brilliant guerrilla general, he was also a very shrewd diplomat. And he figured out all by himself that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So he sent a delegation to the Roman Senate and said, look, you want to conquer the Seleucid Greeks. I want to get rid of the Seleucid Greeks. I want to beat them. So maybe we can make a deal. And in fact, the Roman Senate was more than happy in 161 BCE to make a deal. And the book of Maccabees tells us what the deal was. And this is a copy of the reply. This is from the first book of Maccabees, chapter 8. And this is a copy of the reply they inscribed on bronze tablets and sent to Jerusalem to remain there with the Jews as a record of peace and alliance. May it be well with the Romans and the Jewish nation at sea and on land forever. May sword, it's very bombastic. May sword and enemy be far from them. But if war is first made on Rome or any of its allies in any of their dominions, the Jewish nation will fight along with them wholeheartedly as the occasion shall demand. And to those who wage war, they shall not give or provide grain, weapons, money, or ships, as seems best to Rome. They shall fulfill their obligations without receiving any recompense. In the same way, if war is made first on the Jewish nation, the Romans will fight along them willingly, as the occasion shall demand, so on and so forth. And this treaty is going to be forever, like the treaties with the Native Americans, until the rivers cease to flow and the sun ceases to shine. And we know that in the case of those endless treaties with the Native Americans, the treaty with the Romans, it didn't end up so well. But in the meantime, what happened was that the Romans moved troops into the red areas on what's now Turkey, and that forced Antiochus to move troops to take troops from the battle against Yehuda to meet the Romans and match their strength, which weakened their presence in Eretz Israel, which allowed for the Maccabean victory. So we started off very well, and in fact, this is really the formal beginning of the Jewish community of Rome. Because let's put it simply, if you come in Yerushalayim today and you see there's all kinds of little apartments, this is the consulate of this, the consulate of that. The country sends a consulate, even a small country sends an embassy. You need an ambassador, you need a secretary, you take a local person, the family, and you get an apartment. Jews is not like that. With Jews, you got to send a sheikhet, and you got to send a moil, and you got to send people for a minyan, and so community begins to grow. And so the Jewish community, there might have been some Jews before that, but the Jewish community begins to grow around the embassy, around the permanent Jewish Judean delegation in Rome. So that's as far as it goes back. That's pretty impressive. And what did they do? They built a shul. Now, the first shuls that they built are actually in Rome proper. Those have not been found, but we have an idea of how they looked because they were outside of Rome in the town of Ostia. They discovered the remains of a shul that was built a little bit later, but you can get a sense of the fact that they had a building fund and they everybody chipped in, and you see this is not a small business. Take a look. I mean, take a look at the model on the left-hand side. You've got a big area. You've also got a courtyard and a well. There's a mikveh over here. Storage areas. This is a very large complex in Ostia, which is Jews lived in Ostia because Ostia was the port. Jews were basically in trade. So you want to be near the port when the stuff comes into town. By the way, there were also dedicatory plaques in this synagogue. This synagogue was dedicated by Mr. and Mrs. Hyman Schwartz in memory of whatever it is. And then it wasn't Hyman Schwartz, but it actually was a a Jewish freedman and his wife. But the point is that, you know, that you name, they're already naming buildings, and they're naming pillars, and they're getting, I mean, it sounds, some things don't like change. It's just, all right. So you have so you have the community. So what, you know, what did Jews do in Rome at the time? So the first thing Jews did is they did business, and they apparently were very, very successful. But one of the things, and they were so successful that they aroused the ire and the jealousy of the Romans. How do I know this? Because of the trial of a guy whose name was Gaius Valerius Flaccus. Not somebody I don't think you've actually heard of recently. He's not, wasn't in the news. In the year 63, 4 years before the date on the slide, there was a civil war in the land of Israel between descendants of the Maccabees and two brothers, actually, literally, in Hebrew, call it a milchemet achim, a civil war, a war between the brothers. In this case, it really was two brothers that each claimed the throne of Judea. And one of them, the older one, sent a message to Pompey the Great, who was the great Roman conqueror, happened to be in the neighborhood, and said, I want to invoke the mutual defense clause in that treaty that we signed 100 years ago, 100 years ago, and you should come to my aid against my brother. So Pompey said, oh, that's great. So he came in, and he didn't help Hyrcanus, didn't help his brother, he helped himself. So he put Hyrcanus on the throne, and basically said, now I'm in charge, and Rome is now Rome has now conquered you. We're running things, although we'll have a puppet. You, Hyrcanus, you can be the puppet ruler in the name of Rome. So in other words, Jewish independence was ended not because we lost a battle, but because of inner dissension and inner contention. In any event, when Pompey came, he came to all kinds of agreements as to what the relationship will be between this Jewish client state and Rome. And one of the things that he guaranteed was that the money that was sent annually by Jews from around the world to finance the service in the temple in Jerusalem would be sacrosanct, that nobody would touch it. Now, that's right. You have to keep in mind, in these the people traveling is not easy. So Jews who are living throughout the Mediterranean at this point, by this point, their major connection with the land of Israel is sending their half shekel to the temple, and this becomes serious money and a serious issue of self-identification. I mean, this is the Jews took this very, very, very seriously, and so that was agreed. That's in 63. 4 years later, there's I think my mother would call him a chalaria. Yeah. My mother would call him a chalaria, a really miserable person. His name is Gaius Valerius Flaccus, who was the governor of a town in Asia Minor. I'm not going to make you crazy with the towns. And he sees there's a big boat coming in from the Jews of Spain full of money. He said, oh, money's good. So he took the money. So now watch what happens. This gets back to the Jews in Spain, and they write to the Jews in Rome, and they say, this chalaria touched the money for the temple. So the Jews in Rome put pressure on the Roman Senate. Now, mind you, Jews are in Rome 100 years, right? They put pressure on the Roman Senate to get Flaccus recalled and put on trial for embezzlement and sort of malfeasance. Is that a word? So and that's pretty impressive that Jews can do that. Flaccus wasn't an idiot. Flaccus got himself the absolutely best lawyer and the best speaker in Rome, a guy who you may have heard of, whose picture is on the left-hand side, Marcus Tullius Cicero. So Cicero is the attorney for the defense, and he gives a series of really amazing speeches. It could be called the Oraciones pro Flacco, the speeches for Flaccus, and he gets Flaccus off. What's important for us is what Cicero says about the Jews in Rome and how they're perceived by the Romans. So after he talks about a lot of other things, he says the next thing is the charge about the Jewish gold, in other words, where Flaccus was accused of taking the money. And this, forsooth, is the reason why this cause is pleaded near the steps of the Aurelius. He says, got to be realized. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not going to read the whole thing. He says, do you ever wonder why this trial is taking place near in this building? Because the Jews do business near here. They control everything. They control the money. You know how numerous that crowd is, how great is its human unanimity. They hang together, and of what weight it is in the popular assembly. I will speak in a low voice so that just the judges hear me, because I don't want the Jews to find out what's going on, because they and their superstition, we can't trust them. They look like they're honest members of the popular. This is not familiar. In other words, it was, so when you say the protocols of the elders of Zion, right? The Jews run everything. I mean, there were two questions I've always been asking myself I've been asking myself for many years. Question number one is people ask me, how do Israelis do it to make it in Israel? And I don't know. The other thing is, how did Jews manage to run the world? And I don't know how we do that either. In any case, but it didn't start with the protocols of the elders of Zion in 1905. The first person to come up with this idea is Marcus Tullius Cicero, the great Roman orator and thinker and politician, in the year 59 BC. But what the passage tells us is the Jews were numerous, they were prominent, they were successful, and they were successful enough that that you could actually convincingly say, or at least people were willing to believe that the Jews had more power than perhaps they even did. In addition, there's a lot of hostility towards Judaism per se, at least in the upper class. One of the things that apparently Jews were also doing, and how they were perceived by the Romans, is that they were doing something that we assume automatically Jews don't do. They were running around and converting non-Jews to Judaism. Now, apparently there was not a desire, there was interest among all levels of society, but the Jews were apparently doing it to such a degree that Claudius, and this happened a few other times. I'm not bringing all of the information. By the way, do anybody here remember I, Claudius from the 70s with Derek Jacobi? It was probably one of the best masterpiece theaters. No? Yes? Somebody? Anybody? Okay, somebody remembers. By the way, if you want to watch it, it's all on YouTube. You can see it again. It's amazing. Anyways, Claudius threw the Jews out of Rome because they were making too much trouble. But the most interesting of the proselytes, which shows you just how high interest in Judaism reached in Roman society, is hinted at in the second passage on this page. Josephus, the famous general, historian, possibly most likely turncoat and traitor too, in his book, The Antiquities of the Jews, which is one of the earliest books of Jewish history, tells us the following story. He was telling us a story about two Jews who were brought for trial because there was a fight over a wall between two buildings in, okay, I see this question. Derek Jacobi, correct. But he also, Sheehan Phillips, who was married to Peter O'Toole, and what's his name? The guy who plays Picard on Star Trek. Quick, what's his name? Patrick Stewart plays Tiberius. Anyways, Patrick Stewart plays Sejanus. In any case, he's judging this case. And then, so Josephus mentions, and when Nero had heard what they had to say, he not only forgave them what they had already done, but also gave them leave to let the wall they had built stand. Why did he do this? This was granted them in order to gratify Poppaea, whose bust you have on the left-hand side, Nero's wife, who was a religious woman and had requested these favors of Nero. When Josephus says a religious woman, he means a Jewish religious woman. He wouldn't say that a person who's a pagan is religious. So apparently Nero's wife was a convert. Nero's wife was Jewish. That's how high it got. Now that can be a mixed blessing, historically speaking. Don't forget, this is all before the Jews rebel in Judea. Why do I say it's a mixed blessing? Because Tacitus tells us, here's a picture of Nero playing his harp while Rome burns. The Great Fire of Rome was undertaken was done by Nero in order to do gentrification. We used to be called, I don't know if it's still called urban. It used to be called urban renewal when I was a kid. And a lot of people died. So Nero didn't want to take responsibility himself. So he was looking for a scapegoat to blame the fire that he started on. Originally, apparently, he really wanted to blame the Jews. But Poppaea intervened and said, no, don't blame the Jews. So Nero says, I got to blame somebody. So Tacitus tells us who the somebody was. Therefore, to scotch the rumor, Nero substituted as culprits and punished with the utmost refinements of cruelty a class of men loathed for their vices, whom the crowd styled Christians. So this is not something you should tell your non-Jewish friends. That the reason why Christians were blamed for the Great Fire of Rome is because the Jews had too much clout, and Poppaea was able to convince Nero to blame somebody else. But the point is that you see, what do you see? You see a community which is very prominent, which is aggressively Jewish, which has people reaching to the highest levels of Roman society. They're doing okay. At the same time, they don't go native. I apologize for the Hebrew. I did not have translations. I will translate these passages for you. Despite the fact that a community it becomes very independent, it has very, very intense ties with the land of Israel, and not only with the land of Israel, but with the sages, with the Pharisees, with the religious leadership, which especially took over after the destruction of the temple. And the overwhelming, I mean, you can see already from the story of the Maccabees that the Jews who come to live in Rome are all from the land of Israel. And certainly after the destruction of the temple, when tens of thousands of captive Judeans are brought to Rome as slaves, and the Jewish community works overtime to redeem them and to get them out of slavery, you're talking about a huge increase in the population, but also they talk about 97,000 to 100,000 slaves in the first few years after the destruction in 70. But you're also saying that culturally, they all have ties with the land of Israel. Those ties become very, very, very important for the creation and the fashioning of the community from an educational point of view, from a cultural point of view, and creating this sort of like, I'm here and I'm there at the same time. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it's a trope in Jewish history. There are three interesting proofs that I particularly like, which sort of bear this out. The first passage on top is a passage from the Talmud. It says, the rabbis have taught us, justice shall you pursue. You should follow sages to a yeshiva. In other words, if you want to pursue justice, you should go and study Torah. Go follow Rabbi Eliezer to Lud. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkadus was in the town of Lud. To Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to Ber Chayil in the Galil. To Rabbi Yehoshua in Pekian. If you were in Israel, you might have been in Pekian, which is this town in the Galil where Jews have always lived since the time of the Second Temple. To Rabbi Gamliel in Yavne. To Rabbi Akiva in Bnei Brak. And this is the kicker. Achar Rabbi Matya leRomi. Follow Rabbi Matya ben Cheresh to the city of Rome. Apparently, Matya ben Cheresh, who was one of the rabbis of the Mishnah, were sent by the rabbis in Israel to be the first, like a shaliach, like an educational emissary to make sure that the Jews of Rome had decent Jewish education. So there was a sense on the part of the establishment, if you want, in Israel towards vis-a-vis the Jews of Rome, that we have to, make sure that these people have their own education. They have a quality Jewish education. How effective was it? Well, the second passage tells it apparently was effective. This is a passage from the Jerusalem Talmud, which tells us that Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Joshua and Rabbi Gamliel once went up to Rome, apparently on communal business, and they landed most likely at the town of Puteoli, which is a port south of Rome. Ve'ashkechun me'anukaya avdin gabshush. And they saw a bunch of little kids playing in a sandbox. And the little kids were saying, "This is what the people in Israel do." And they had this big pile of sand, and they said, "This is truma, this is maser." What's that? The Torah says that if you're in agriculture and you harvest your harvest, you have to give a certain amount to the priest and a certain amount to the Levite, and before you're allowed to eat it yourself. And these little kids are playing in the sandbox, and they're mimicking what they're doing in Israel, pretending that they're giving these gifts to the priest and to the Levite, even though those things are not practiced outside the land of Israel. Which means that the entire curriculum of study of Roman Jewish kids was predicated on what they were studying in Israel. So this only reinforces this, I'm here and I'm there at the same time. That's not such an unusual business. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I've been here so long, I have no idea what goes on in the schools today. But when I was a kid, I remember that the entire Hebrew school curriculum that I had at Temple Emmanuel in Newton, Massachusetts, and then again certainly at the Prosdor of Hebrew College, when it was really Prosdor of Hebrew College, was all based on what they did in Israel. In fact, I remember that there was a standard speech that teachers would give you. You'd walk into class, you have an assembly in February, and it was cold and it was snowy, and the teacher would say, "Outside it's snowy, but in the land of Israel, the almond trees are blooming, and it's spring, and it's this and it's this," and they would give us a box of sun-made raisins and some almonds and buxer. Everybody know what buxer is? It's carob. It's dried carob. A buxer actually comes from Israel, but it's imported. I was convinced it was imported by the dentist to make sure that the kids broke their teeth and then could go to the dentist. Anyways, so the point is, but what's the point? The point is that there too, that in the 60s and 70s, certainly in the 50s, that the Hebrew school curriculum was predicated not so much on what goes on in Boston or in Chicago or in New York, but what goes on in Israel. So this pattern of Jewish education is already set at this time. And the rabbis look at each other and say, "Oh, there must be Jews here." Okay, so you see that in Israel they sent people to help set up the educational establishment in Rome, and what the contents were. Now, the coolest evidence here is on the left-hand side. This is a wall painting. This is a wall painting from Pompeii. Now, I don't know if you've been to Pompeii. Pompeii was the pleasure city of the Romans. It was a town of absolutely terrible repute. It was a time that in certain buildings, when there would be mixed groups, men and women touring, that they wouldn't let the women into some of the buildings because the wall paintings were so problematic, let's say. However, one of the biggest houses in Pompeii is called the doctor's house, because apparently it was big, because they found indications it was owned by a doctor. But they didn't know anything any more about the doctor. And one of the wall paintings in the house of the doctor is the one you see on the left-hand side. What you see there is a guy holding a spear in the here. Let me see if I can. Where's my mouse? Okay, you see that? And he's got two other people on either side. You see this guy and this guy. They're all sitting together. It's clear that he's the head honcho, surrounded by soldiers. You have a woman here pleading with this tribunal. And over here, a picture of a woman holding a baby. And there's a guy here with an axe, and he's going to cut the baby. And everybody goes, "We don't know this is what could this be? What could this be? What do you think this is?"
Solomon.
Exactly. Finally, a Jewish art historian, my colleague, Dr. Professor Sarit Shaleveni, I took a look and said, "Wait a minute, this is the judgment of Solomon." So first of all, so the doctor is a Jew, Mela. Must have been a skin doctor, but anyway. In any case, knowing what was going on in Pompeii. But what's interesting is what made the non-Jewish art historians not understand what was going on is why are there three guys on the same level on a stage? When a king sits, if you see any movies where you have pictures of the king always sits above everybody else, even if his wife or his children are with him, they're always at a lower level. Here, all three figures are sitting on the same level, and they can't figure it out. So again, Professor Shalev Aini says, no, what is this? What are we seeing here? A rabbinical court requires three judges. And that's what you have. Solomon is being portrayed as a rabbinical judge. Is it possible to get the slides in a PDG? I will send, you know what I will do? I will send the entire PowerPoint to Claudia, and then you can do with it as you wish. In any case, so what you have here is the earliest. First of all, is an indication that the Roman Jews follow the rabbinic law, which requires three judges to judge a case. Number two, this is the earliest representation of the idea that that a Jewish court requires three judges. And we know exactly how early this is because Pompeii was destroyed with Herculaneum when Vesuvius erupted in 79. So this house has got to predate the destruction of the temple. Okay, so here you have three indications that the Jews of Rome are in careful contact with the rabbis. The center in Israel is worried about their education. The educational curriculum is the same one which is being followed in the land of Israel, and we see that even in their art, they're using it's being recorded. To the best of my Claudia put on a recording. So there you go. Okay, so we know what. So that's the first thing about. So that's the end of stage one. Over the course, going to skip forward because okay. What's another question? Okay. Okay. So that's in ancient Rome. Over the centuries, probably for business reasons, the Jews end up living south in the southern part of the peninsula. For the first like 1,200 years, 1,300 years, Jews live in the south, again, because it's business. Because Brindisium and all these areas are areas where there are ports and Jews are in business. What do we know about their life? So first of all, we know that they lived a very rich Jewish life. We know, for example, that when they buried people, they buried their dead the same way that everybody else did. And this is going to be the first example of something that we're going to encounter over and over again in Italian Jewish history. That on the one hand, Jews are very much involved and very much influenced and part of the general cultural Italian scene, but at the same time they make a very, very big effort to maintain their own uniqueness. So similarly, the pagans and Christians bury in caves, in catacombs. In the city of Venosa, southern Italy, we have a beautiful picture of a menorah, which is the classic. Don't forget, there's no Magen David. The Star of David only starts being used in the 16th century. You want to find something Jewish, you find the menorah. Jews are burying their dead the same way that the others are, except that with Jewish signs. At the same time, apparently they have their own schools as well, and they have their own rabbis. And yet at the same time, they keep up their connections with the land of Israel. How do I know? Because we found archaeologists have found a lot of gravestones, tombstones. On one of them, there's a story about a very wealthy woman who died, and at her funeral, there are duo apostoli et duo rebetes, two rabbis and two apostles. Apostles? Was she Christian? No. The word apostle means emissary. So what's an apostle? What's an emissary? It's a guy who came from Israel to teach maybe a little bit and also to schnorr for the, again, some things don't change. So the local rabbis, they attended because this was the richest woman in town, and they had a couple of guys who were come to collect, and they okay, we're going to skip this now. Now life in southern Italy at the time was what shall I say, was a mix. On the one hand, the Jews were very, very successful. They were they basically had a monopoly on cloth, on the shmata business, basically on fashion, especially in dyeing cloth. But the Romans who ruled were already Christians. They were from the Byzantine Empire in the east, which ruled southern Italy. And the Byzantines were not exactly Jew-friendly. Especially this gentleman over here on the left-hand side. His name was Romanus Lekapanos, who ruled from 870 to 948. I'm sorry, he lived from 870 to 948. He was my mother, again, I'll quote my mother, he was a richtige antisemit. He was a real Jew hater. And he initiated in the 10th century, in the 900s, a series of very, very serious anti-Jewish persecutions, forcing Jews to convert. And for the first time, we hear about Jews who actually martyr themselves or allow themselves to be martyred rather than to be forced to convert to Christianity. This becomes very, very important later because apparently the tradition of Jewish martyrdom, which especially marked Ashkenazi Jews, we'll talk about that in a minute, comes from southern Italy. So what do we have here? We have here, if this is the case, we've been talking about the land of Israel and relations with southern Italy. Now we're beginning to see that the Italians influenced the Jews in the north. We're going to talk about that in a sec, at least on this point. Now, as things got more, what shall I say? As things became more unsettled, the Jews of southern Italy begin to look for other places to live, and we have this tradition from a book from the 17th century in Crete. Tells us the following story. And Rabbi Kalonymus the elder received the tradition from his father, Rabbi Isaac. They all received the secret of the true version of the prayers, teacher from his teacher, up to Abu Aharon, the son of Rabbi Samuel Hanassi, who came from Babylonia because of a misadventure, and he had to wander. And he found this guy, Rabbi Moses, son of Kalonymus, who wrote a certain poem, and he got all the secrets. And he was Rabbi Moses, son of Kalonymus, son of Rabbi Judah. He was the first person to leave Lombardy. He and his sons, Rabbi Kalonymus and Rabbi Yekutiel, and his relation, Rabbi Itiel, and other important persons, for King Charles, brought them from Lombardy to Magenza, and they were there until the First Crusade in 1096. What is this? Here you have a tombstone in Mainz of one of the descendants. What's the story over here? Story over here is as follows. Because of the unsettled situation in southern Italy, many of the southern Italian families, especially the most learned families, started moving north. First, they moved to Lucca, which is north of Florence, and then they get invited to Mainz, because Mainz in Germany was a major trading town. The local rulers wanted, the emperor especially, wanted Jews who at the time had a monopoly on international trade. Jews were the ones who actually ran international trade from the West all the way to China. Why were Jews suited for this especially? Because there were Jews everywhere. And at this point already, the world is divided between the Christians and the Muslims, and it's dangerous for Christians to travel to Muslim countries and vice versa. But Jews can go where they want. So the Jews fell into this, and they became a very desirable quantity. So in this case, King Charles, whoever he was, brought the Kalonymus family from southern Italy to Mainz and then to Worms and other places, and they effectively found Ashkenazic Jewry. because they don't just come to make money. They're learned people. They have traditions about how to pray, and they have certain, and they know, and how to write liturgical poetry and mysticism. These are the guys who come, and they're really the fathers, or among the major fathers of Ashkenazic Jewry. So to a certain significant extent, Ashkenazic Jewry is a descendant of these Jews of Italy that we've been talking about. Second of all, they have all these traditions both from the land of Israel and now from Babylonia. So the Italy serves as a place of Jewish creativity. At the same time, it is also a place where all traditions from outside of Italy meet and then get transferred to a brand new center, which becomes known as Ashkenaz. Does anybody have a relative whose name is Clonimus, by the way? Sometimes it happens. Usually Clonimus Kalman is a name that people like to use. Kalonimus is a Greek name because they spoke Greek in southern Italy. Kalenomos means Shem Tov, good name. Okay. I am actually going to skip ahead because we don't have a lot of time. And talk about and skip ahead to stage 2. Stage 2 is the second half of the Middle Ages. Jews are living in southern Italy most of this time. And for all kinds of reasons, they end up moving into the north. They started moving to the north sometime around the 1350, in the wake, to a large degree, of the wake of the. Okay, I hope you don't mind. I just want to say hello to my grandson, who I haven't seen in 2 months because of the lockdown. Hi, Yotan. Thank you very much.
I found this in there.
Okay, thank you very much. But I have to go. I have to teach. Okay, go with Baba. Okay. All right. Sorry, he's 4. You can't. There's a limit. Anyways, so the Jews moved north from southern Italy because as a result of the Black Plague. There's always about a plague. There's need for credit, and Jews have money. But what's interesting for our purposes is Jews move into the northern part of Italy where there had been no Jews before, interestingly, from 4 directions. First, Italian Jews from southern Italy and Rome move north. French Jews are expelled from France in 1394, and they don't come back till the French Revolution, and they come in from the northwest. German Jews, because of the Black Death, because of all the pogroms and they accuse the Jews of. At least they haven't accused us of COVID. Could be worse. I mean, they come in from the northeast, and then Spanish Jews end up coming from the west. In other words, for the first time in Jewish history, all of the major Jewish traditions, with the exception of the Yemenites, meet together in northern Italy and have to learn how to get along. And they all have this. You can have the old joke about, you don't look Jewish. Well, yeah, that's what happened. You don't pray like me, and we don't eat the same food. How are we going to get along? Sometimes it doesn't get along. A lot of times they get along. In fact, there's a city called Leghorn, which is north of Florence, where Spanish Jews, after the expulsion came, and the Genoese wanted them to live, and the Livornese wanted the Jews to live there. These Spanish Jews to live there because they had money and connections, and they said that's fine. We'll move in under it, not a problem, on one condition: no Ashkenazim are allowed to live with us because they're inferior. So we're our own worst enemies. Anyways, in any case, Jews end up living scattered around the peninsula because the only thing that Jews really were allowed to do was to lend money, and there's a limit to how much that you can do. So therefore, Jews end up spreading out through all kinds of different communities, and there may be 3, 4 in one town. Sometimes you have a minion, sometimes you don't. It's not an easy life. Take a look on the left-hand side. You have a picture of a synagogue in Imola, which is in Lombardy, in 1460. Interestingly, it looks like it's not clear. It looks like men and women are sitting together, which is odd, because we know that most of the synagogues at the time have a separate women's section. So this might be a class and not services. either way, it's not a lot of people, and it's a very small bill. It's in a very small room, notice, and very few people. Jewish communities tend to be very, very, very small. In the right-hand side, there's a text which quotes a responsum. A responsum is a legal question asked of a rabbi. And the question here is, if you have a Jewish community where the practice was to pay to bring people to make a minyan for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and one part of the community decides they don't want to pay for it anymore, can they be forced to pay? And the guy writes back, he says, it depends. If you have a permanent practice of bringing in 6, 7, 8 people, then you can certainly do that. Wait a minute. So if there's a practice to pay for 6, 7, 8 people, how many Jews are in this community that we're talking about? 3? Maybe there's 2 families, and they had a fight. So life is very difficult. And it's very lonely. By the way, it means it's also going to be much harder to maintain your Jewishness because you don't have a community. I mean, you're talking about, here's a community that they're splitting over where they can have a minyan. It means they don't have a minyan the whole year. These are all, what we would call Orthodox people. This is not an easy life. So the threats of, or the danger of assimilation is much greater. Nevertheless, you find an interesting dynamic that on the one hand, despite the fact that Jews are a minority, and they're a small minority even in these cities, they are on the one hand deeply involved in general culture, and at the same time uniquely Jewish without losing their own uniqueness. I'm going to, in the time that we still have 10 minutes, I want to show you how that works. So I want to introduce you to a person whose name is Salomone Rossi. Solomon of the Red family, that was one of the oldest Jewish Roman families. He was a composer. He was a violinist, a well-known composer of madrigals at the court of this man on the left, Vincenzo Gonzaga, the Duke of Mantova. And his boss was a composer who you might have heard of. His name is Monteverdi. I want to but he also wrote music for the synagogue. I want to play for you two brief parts of pieces that he wrote, and I want and see what you think. Hold on, quick. Where is this? Good, here we are. Can you hear? Okay, you got the idea. It's more important you see the next slide. He also wrote for the synagogue. Okay, this is a picture of the synagogue in which he was the head of the choir, and apparently Chazan. Now listen to what he wrote for the synagogue in Mantova. Hold on. The texture, the timbre, the style is identical. The madrigal that he made for the Gonzaga, and so it's interesting. When this was first introduced into the synagogue, there was a riot because some people said that's fantastic, and other people said no, it's goyish, and they came to blows. I mean, or something close to it. We're talking about Italians after all. But the point is, ultimately, the Italian Jews had no problem. They said, we'll take the, we're willing to, we're taking what we learned from the outside world, the best of in this case, Baroque music, and we'll dedicate it to God. What's the problem? We are both part of our environment and also uniquely Jewish, and we can bridge things that way. And we find that Jews, in fact, are living in a very, very Italian manner. So, for example, Jews study with and are serious participants in Renaissance humanism. Each of these three people, I don't know if the names are going to make it ring a bell, Marsilio Ficino, Pico della Mirandola, Egidio de Viterbo, were the greatest humanists of the age, meaning the greatest scholars of the age. And each one of them had intense relations with Jewish scholars. They would study together. Jews were invited to participate in conferences, and nobody saw anything wrong with that. Not only that, but the Jews, these are three famous works of grammar and history, which are written by Jews in Hebrew, trying to take the best of the outside world and putting it to the service of Judaism. But it's not just but it's interestingly, it's not just Jews don't just get involved in just studying. The people that we just saw, for example, these guys, they all studied Kabbalah, they all studied Jewish mysticism, and it's not restricted just to books. For example, one of the great dramatists of the Renaissance was a Jewish guy. His name was Judah Somo Portaleone. He wrote the most important book about playwriting, Quattro dialoghi materia sceniche, in which he talks about the need for unity, the three unities. I don't know if you that characterized the great age of European theater in the 17th century, 16th, 17th century: the unity of time, unity of action, and unity of plot. And anybody who reads Shakespeare knows that that's exactly how Shakespeare structured his plays, and then so many others. He also wrote plays in Italian to be played for a non-Jewish audience. And the first play, it was a comedy for Jews, was called Sachot B'dichut de Kiddushin. It's a what's the word? It's like a comedy of errors about a Jewish family in Mantova. Again, you're Italian and you're Jewish at the same time. Dance. There was a man whose name was Guglielmo Ebreo. We don't know anything about him except it says William the Jew. His name was probably Binyamin or Zev. And he wrote one of the most important books on Renaissance dance ever written, Trattato dell'arte del ballo, the tractate on the art of the dance. I'm going to show you a representation of one of those dances because you're going to see in a second how important this is. Okay, Yafa. Okay, so that's a typical Renaissance dance. One of them treated in the book. Hold on. And now, take a look. This is a picture of a wedding in northern Italy at precisely a little bit earlier than that, from the Rothschild Miscellany, a famous Jewish Hebrew Limerick manuscript. And what are they doing? They're doing exactly the kind of dancing that we saw in the clip. Not only that, but we know from other sources, where it's not time, I can't go into it, but we know from other sources that not only is this, did they used to dance like this at a wedding, they used to have Shabbat afternoon dances in the synagogue. Try that again. Shabbat afternoon dances in the synagogue with a dance master. So who provides the music? So you get non-Jews to provide the music. There's no electric, by the way. And the Italian Jews developed all kinds of Jewish legal justifications to allow for this kind of activity. Precisely, exactly what was going on in both communities. Jews dressed like everybody else. In fact, they dressed better than a lot of non-Jews. So here you have an example of what's called sumptuary laws. The Jews were dressing so fancily that they were encouraging the envy and physical assault from the non-Jews. So therefore, in 1416, Jews got, and they did this a few times, got together saying, we have to stop. We can't show off. We can't walk around dressed better than everybody else. It's dangerous. So these are regulations which discuss what you can wear. Can you have fur? Can you not have fur? How fancy can you dress when you're outside the Jewish community? Because it's dangerous, which tells us what? That despite the fact that the Jews are open to adopting all kinds of things from the outside world, and we see a lot of cooperation among Jewish and Christian intellectuals, that anti-Semitism or anti-Judaism was not absent. I happen to like this rule. This at the same time, excuse me. They at the same time that they had the rule against dressing too fancily. They also passed this rule, which I want to zero in on for a minute. From the end of this month of Sivan, and that was 1418, till the end of the year 1426, no Jew shall be permitted to invite to a banquet more than 20 men and 10 women and 5 girls. The number should include both the people of the city and those without, but those should not include relatives as close as second cousins. In other words, people are spending too much money on weddings. They're spending too much money on inviting to. They're mortgaging their homes to make a wedding. That's stupid. So therefore, look at the next passage. If a bride arrives from another city on horse, she may be escorted by no more than 10 Jews on horseback and 4 men on foot. You used to have these reception committees. If she came by boat, she may be escorted to the place of the wedding by no more than 12 Jews or Jewesses. And you can only invite 10 people, 10 males and 5 women to a bris. And if you violate these provisions, you'll be given a fine of 1 ducat. 1 ducat's enough to support a family for a couple of months. Okay, so this is serious business. And but you see that the Jews are doing fine. And look at, they're talking about, by the way, we know from other sources that these guys, that these like welcome committees, this is not just couple on horses. They would have swords, and sometimes they wore armor, and they look like they look like something straight out of the Medici. Not by chance. Jews go hunting. Jews go hunting. This is a relatively late source by a rabbi in Ancona on the eastern, in the Papal States, on the eastern shore of Italy, where the rabbi says, "How can Jews go hunting? What hunting? Why would Jews don't go hunting? It's ridiculous." But we know that they do, and pious Jews go hunting. We know there's one guy whose name was Meshulam of Volterra, who was best buddies with best buddies with Lorenzo the Magnificent, the head Medici. And when Meshulam would find himself a good deer, and he'd go with his arrow, and he killed the deer, he'd send it to, he can't eat it, it wasn't shechted, so he would send it to Lorenzo. We happen to know something about this guy Meshulam of Volterra. Meshulam of Volterra was a profoundly pious person who used to go to Israel by boat on pilgrimage on a regular basis. How do you put this together? I have no idea, but facts are facts. We're running out of time. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. How much were they aware of high Renaissance culture? Well, we have this incredible statement by a man whose name was Giorgio Vasari. Giorgio Vasari was this leading disciple of Michelangelo, and he really the first biographer of the great painters and artists of Italy. And he writes about the Moses and how beautiful it is and so on. Look at the last 3 lines. The Jews still go every Saturday in troops to visit and adore it as a divine and not a human thing. Now, where, anybody been to Rome? You know where the Moses is? It's in a church. And San Pietro in Vincoli, where the according to Christian tradition, the chains of St. Peter are kept. In other words, he is reporting, he doesn't know this is an issue about Jews going into churches. He is reporting that in the 15th, 16th century, the Jews are already in a ghetto. We'll talk about that in a sec. They're in a ghetto. Shabbos afternoon, after they come back from shul and after they have lunch. So what do? You go for a spazier. You have a nap and then you go for a walk. What do? You go for a walk. You go to see the Moses. You turn around and you go back in time before they lock the gates of the ghetto. But they were aware and they were appreciative. But they're in a ghetto. So I call this inside outside. What made possible the heavy Jewish involvement and awareness and participation in high Renaissance and Baroque culture was a dual dynamic. On the one hand, they felt very much Italian. They felt very much part of their immediate surroundings, but it was made very clear by the Christians that they were outsiders. So there was this sort of psychic distance between them that on the one hand, they identify with being Italian. On the other hand, and they weren't in a hurry to convert, they made it very clear that they were separate. That somehow they managed to juggle this inside-outside sense, and that comes to it expresses itself nicely in this story by Vasari. And ultimately, a process started from 1516 until 1870 that the Jews were put into ghettos. They were driven out of the small towns where they lived into such small populations, as I mentioned, and they moved into ghettos. It's the earliest ghetto, that of Venice, which was established in 1516. Notice, however, the shul on the right-hand side is the Spanish shul, the Spagnolo, which was built with the assistance of non-Jewish architects and interior designers. It's a magnificent building, and it was built with all this finery to give the Jews the sense that we are here. We will build our synagogue that you're putting us in a ghetto, but we will build our synagogue with the best artists that you have in order to show that our shuls are not any less gorgeous than your cathedrals. So there's an element of very serious competitiveness here as well. Now, as it happens, the period of the ghetto is a period of tremendous creativity. So, on the one hand, for the first time, the Jewish printing is born in the age of the ghetto, or is developed in the age of the ghetto, especially in Venice. The Talmud is printed. Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, comes from the land of Israel, but is disseminated again. You have a case of disseminated to the whole world from Italy because they print all these Kabbalistic books. So here Italy again creates its own thing, and yet it serves as a place where Jewish intellectual trends and ideas meet, and then from there get spread out to the entire world. You have tremendous important Jewish intellectuals and artists and literary people like Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who is a Kabbalist. He's a mystic. He's a playwright. He writes ethical tracts, and his influence goes from the ghetto he lived in Padova, in Padova and in Venice, to the entire world. Now, in 1789, or a little bit later, after from the time of the French Revolution and on, especially when Napoleon conquers Italy, one of the things that happens is that the Jews are let out of the ghettos, and they rush pell-mell to become Italians. They do incredibly well. sadly, and for reasons that I have yet to be able to figure out, overnight they abandoned religious observance massively. But they become accepted by the Italians into Italian society. The man on the front on the right hand side, and they become very, and they are very central figures in what's called the Risorgimento, the process by which Italy is unified, and by which it obtains its independence from foreign powers that rule large tracts of the country. The gentleman on the right hand side, Cesare Rovigi, is one of the heroes of the Risorgimento. He's a Jewish guy. Um, and and Jews play especially high role in the attempt to liberate Italy from the church, which rules large parts of Italy. This comes to a cruel and poignant um, what's the word? No. Expression in the story of the abduction of Edgardo Mortara, who lived in Bologna. Um, Edgardo Mortara was a little Jewish kid born to a assimilated Jewish family. He got sick. His nursemaid was afraid he was going to die, so he had him baptized. The church came and took him away from the parents. The Pope says he's baptized, so therefore we can't let him go. It became a cause célèbre around the world. Led to the creation of the Alliance Israélite Universelle in France. It was a tremendous scandal. Alienated many people from the church. Helped the Risorgimento. Edgardo Mortara stayed, became a priest, and it was considered to be one of the great scandals of Italian Jewish history. In 1870, Garibaldi wanted to make a point, so he put Mortara's brother in charge of one of the forces that attacked Rome and conquered the Vatican. But Edgardo stayed Catholic. There is a very fine book by a man named David Kurtzer about the whole story, and Steven Spielberg is supposed to make a movie about it in the near future. Jews in Italy did not suffer in the early parts of. They were very assimilated. They became very much a part of Italian life. Mussolini had many had many Jewish friends and supporters. Nevertheless, Mussolini sold out the Jews and passed racial laws. But Italian Jews were not sent to death camps so long as Italy was ruled by Mussolini. When Mussolini fell in 1943 and the Germans came in, the Jews of those Jews that were under Nazi occupation were in fact deported from the place on the left-hand side at the front of the ghetto. There's a picture of the deportation on the right-hand side. And to this day, the record of Italians in Italy in the Shoah is a mix. Lots of Italians helped Jews, hid Jews. One of the great bicyclists of all time actually was recognized as a righteous Gentile for helping to run papers to false papers to Jews in hiding. On the other, the Carabinieri, the entire force of Italian police, refused to cooperate with the roundup and were sent to concentration camps. The non-Jews. On the other hand, there were also collaborators. As I said, it's a mix. But at that point, the Jews of many of the Jews of Italy made the decision that sort of their time was up, and that was symbolized by this episode. This is on the day that after the partition debate, the following ceremony took place in Rome. This is taken from an Israeli sponsored documentary from the late 70s.
On that same day, Jews gathered beneath the Arch of Titus in Rome. This triumphal arch, honoring the Roman Caesar who had destroyed Jerusalem, symbolized the beginnings of the Jewish problem. Here they offered prayers of thanksgiving, declaring that the land which had fallen captive 2,000 years ago had now risen to life once again. No longer were the Jews without a home. They had come full circle.
So we started our discussion with a picture of the Arch of Titus, and we're ending our discussion with the Arch of Titus. I will tell you that when the after this ceremony, the entire Roman Jewish community, much of whom had many of whom had been in hiding until then, during the war, walked to the east, to the western side of the Arch of Titus, and walked backwards under the Arch of Titus, as if to say, we are now undoing the exile that Titus started. Now, there's still a very wonderful community there, but the very significant Italian Jewish population is now in Israel. As those of you who came with Pam to visit, I know what happened to Pam, to visit us at the museum, have discovered. I hope I've given you a taste of this wonderful community and its incredible doings. There's a lot more to say, a lot more interesting things to learn about, but it's a beginning. And I will send the PowerPoint to Claudia, and if any of you are interested in learning more, I'd be more than happy to provide references or books that you might want to read, or whatever the case might be. Thank you for having me.
I want to
Pam,
say thank you. I snuck in at the end, and I'm sorry
Okay.
at the beginning. We did get a request for the presentation. If so, with your permission, we'd love to send it out.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe one day when we're able to travel again, we'll do a mission to Jewish Italy, and you'll show us.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. But the next time you come, police guy, come to mission here, we have to make sure that I don't remember. Do we have Italian? Do we have Roman food for everybody?
We
when
didn't have
went to
Roman food, but we went to the museum.
museum? So
Yeah.
I will have to arrange for the Roman food, because there's a couple who made Aliyah 2 years ago from Rome, and you can't get to Rome.
How large is the Jewish community today?
Interestingly, for all of the stuff that they did, there were never more than 35,000, 50,000 Jews in Rome, in Italy. Today, it's something on the order, officially it's like around 15,000. There are the major two centers are Milan and Rome. There are teeny tiny communities. There's like 200 in Florence and 300 in Venice, and this town, they just opened up a brand new museum of Jewish heritage and Holocaust in Ferrara. There are no Jews there. There's nobody that's left there. The rabbi doesn't even live there, Rabbi Caro. There's a few Jews in Padua. There's a decent size, maybe a couple hundred people in Torino. One of the more interesting things that you find is in southern Italy, where the Catholic Church had actually carried on a policy of forced baptism for a very long time in the Renaissance period. There's a movement, as in the American Southwest, of descendants of conversi to try to come back to Judaism.
Remember when we went to the Italian section in Israel?
It's an amazing museum. It's one of my happiest. I'm on the board, and I'm very it's one of my favorite things to occupy myself with, and hopefully we'll be able to reopen someday. At the moment, we're sort of stuck between Corona and the fact that there hasn't been an Israeli budget for the 2 years. Means that all of the nonprofits, the museums and everything else don't have, we're living on a shoestring. We've had to let most of our staff go, and it's really a difficult situation.
Could you comment briefly on Beneath the Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan? It's the first book I read that talks about the Italian resistance during the war.
I'm not familiar with the book. There are any numbers of books about the Jews under fascism. Look, the Jews were in the Italian army. Jews fought in the resistance. And they didn't expect the Germans to come marching in. That was when Mussolini fell, that was a real shock. So what happened was that it was the tremendous contrast. When Mussolini fell, it was after the Allies had already invaded Italy. So anybody who was south of Monte Cassino, all the Jews were thrilled, because now they were no more Mussolini, and the British and the Americans were in charge. But at that point, everybody was north of Monte Cassino. The Germans came in and just and implemented the final solution. So at that point, really very much at the last minute, they had to make arrangements to fight, to run and to hide and to try to get away. I have a very good friend who's a professor at the University of Rome at La Sapienza. This week marked actually the anniversary of the 77th anniversary of the deportations. And she wrote in Italian on her Facebook page that she's alive by chance. She's alive by chance, and she goes through how one grandmother was in hiding and didn't trust the Germans. So she said, didn't believe them. The Germans had wanted a ransom, so she just didn't go outside. One grandfather was on the other side of the Tiber, and the janitor in her building said something very bad is going to happen. Get the hell out of here. So they ran. And apparently both of these grandparents had connections with the partisans, and they disappeared. My friend's other set of grandparents were in Libya, where a lot of Jews in Italy are actually of Libyan extraction, because Libya was ruled by Italy for a long time. And they also, even though the Germans and the Italians put Jews in concentration camps in North Africa, this idea that the only Ashkenazim were suffered from the Shoah is really not true. In both cases, they were lucky enough to have connections with the partisans, but it was a very surviving was a very dicey thing. To a certain degree, the Italian Jews had less warning even than the Jews in Eastern Europe.
Thank you.
Again, there's this guy David Kurtzer also wrote about the Jews and their fascism, and there were a number of. But you can read the Garden of Vinci Concini. It tells you, it's a very good representation of the kinds of dynamic that was going on in Italy. I recently, I don't remember the name of the book, a brand new book that just came out, that was written by a woman whose name is Eleanor Foa, who lives in New York. The name escapes me, but put in Eleanor Foa. She writes about as an Italian Jewess who was raised in New York, whose parents got out just before the Shoah, goes back on a road trip, and it's really informative. And I got it on Kindle, and it's not expensive. It's really worthwhile. There's also a very well-known memoir of a professor at Haifa whose name was Memoirs of a Fortunate Jew by Dan Vittorio Segre, Segre. Which also covers the same ground. It's not heavy scholarly, but it gives you the same idea of the war years and afterwards.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so
Thank you very much.
Thank
be
you
healthy,
so
be
much.
safe. Yep, and I look forward to be able to come in and to visit Greenwich.
And we'll get you some daily when you're here.
Thank you very much.
All right, this is recorded. If anyone would like it, please let me know.